Case 2, Samuel Pike's Cases of Conscience, 1755. What method must a Christian in declining circumstances take to recover a healthful and vigorous frame of soul, so as to be able to maintain real and close communion with God amidst the hurries and business of this world? This question is formed from the following letter, quote, I have, through a great multiplicity of worldly affairs and a deep engagement in them, lost that savor and relish for divine things I once experienced, and am become a sad stranger to that real communion with God, which was heretofore my chief joy. And I am so greatly declined in the Christian life that I can sometimes omit the duties of secret prayer and meditation, and at other times I perform them with formality and coldness, and yet am no way suitably affected with my sad defections. Indeed, sometimes I have been helped to bemoan my sad case before God, and to plead with the blessed Jesus, the great and good physician, to heal and help me. But alas, things remain with me as before, and if there be any alteration in my case, I really think it is for the worse. End quote. This is a question which, I doubt not, is suitable to the cases of many of God's people in the present dark and degenerate day, when there are so many temptations and difficulties to cool their zeal, damp their joy, and fill them with formality and indifference of spirit in the service of the Redeemer. It is not with us as it was with our forefathers. We don't have their zeal, their faith, their love. We're not humble as they were, nor as watchful as they against the temptations and sins to which we are exposed. We don't discover that acquaintance with the power of religion which they had. We don't walk close with God as they. In short, we have the name, the form, but we have not so much of the life, the spirit, the power of godliness as our forefathers had, who are now in glory. We are more worldly, more selfish, more proud and haughty, more careless and negligent of our frames than our conversation, and have in all respects more of the appearance of almost Christians than they. Yet, blessed be God, this is not the case with every individual. There are a few who desire to honor God by a lively faith, a becoming zeal, and a close and humble walk. A few whose concern it is to make the greatest advances in grace, and to maintain daily communion with God amidst the various hurries of life. They cannot live long without God. They are never easy but when they are feeling His animating and quickening presence with them, and their souls in consequence of it warmed, enlivened, and breathing out desires after Him. This seems to be the case with the person who sent in the above question. You know something of the excellency of communion with God, my dear friend. You have found what it is to have a sweet relish for divine things, and now you are full of uneasiness at the sad loss you have sustained through the hurries and enjoyments of this life, and desirous of having your former experience revived, and to find your soul again in a lively, healthful, and vigorous condition. In this you are not singular. Many, I am persuaded, speak the same language as you do. They feel the same things. They have the same desires and are equally at a loss what to do. It is a case of some importance. May the Spirit of God enable me to answer it in such a manner as may, through a divine blessing, be effectual to bring your soul and the souls of others nearer to God, and quicken you to the pursuit of that which has a tendency to promote your growth in grace, and make you flourishing and lively Christians. But before I directly answer your question, I would make 2 or 3 observations upon it that may give encouragement to persons in such circumstances, as well as to be a caution to them in the pursuits of this world. Number 1. It is a peculiar mercy when we find our souls in a declining condition to be immediately alarmed at it and sensible of it. When God is about to bestow the blessings of salvation, He first makes the sinner sensible of the need of them. So when He is about to revive His work in the soul that has been running astray from Him, He gives him first a sense of his decline, shows him from whence he has fallen, what a stranger he is to the life of religion, what ingratitude he has been guilty of, how much he has lost of the pleasures of the divine life, and how much he has dishonored that God who called him out of darkness into His marvelous light. To lie asleep as David did after his adultery and murder is awful. Oh, sin! is of a hardening nature. The Christian is often stupefied and benumbed with it. It shuts his eyes and it hardens his heart. He has lost in some measure his zeal and liveliness. His graces are withering. His duties are cold and formal. Nay, he can oftentimes omit them. He has not that communion with God he once enjoyed, and yet he appears to be contented. Melancholy case. Bless God that it is not your case. You appear to be sensible of the unhealthy condition your soul is in. You see, it is not with you as in months past. Bless God, Christians, if you are sensible of any decays, if your eyes are open and your souls are impressed with the deep sense of the loss of communion with God, the neglect of duty or formality in it. Number 2, we should esteem it a mercy if, when under a decline, we are earnestly desirous of a revival. This appears to be the case with you, my friend. I think I see you viewing former seasons of communion, falling down before God, and under a deep sense of your declining circumstances. I hear you humbly addressing him in the following manner: Lord, show me what you would have me to do. I would acknowledge my many omissions of duty, my great carelessness and negligence, and would be deeply sensible of the loss I have sustained. Oh, revive your work in my soul, and let me not lie at this languishing rate. Lord, quicken this slothful heart, and kindle the sacred spark afresh, and let me be all alive for you. How happy is it when we are enabled to speak such language, and find our souls in such a frame as this. But on the other hand, to be careless and unconcerned, to be easy and contented in such circumstances, is an awful sign that religion is languishing in our souls, and that there is no present appearances of an alteration. David, when awake, was not only sensible of the dangerous condition he had been in, but was desirous of a revival of the work of God in his soul, that he might again enjoy communion with him, and flourish and prosper in the divine life. Therefore he earnestly prayed that God would graciously look upon him and return to him. Psalm 51, verse 7. Number 3. It is a difficult thing to have much to do with the world and to grow in grace. Through the degeneracy of our hearts, the world has become an enemy to our souls, an hindrance in our way to heaven. Many, like the young man, keep their enjoyments to the loss of their souls. The Christian himself, who has found the emptiness of the world and its insufficiencies to satisfy an immortal desire, is notwithstanding ready to be too fond of it, and finds it a sad clog and hindrance to him at times. He would often leave it behind him when he goes to worship God, but it will follow him from duty to duty, interrupt his communion with God, lead his heart aside, and damp the exercise of every grace. How ready is a Christian to swell with pride on account of his flourishing enjoyments. We have need of great grace to keep us humble in prosperous circumstances, either of soul or body. Is a Christian immersed in cares? Here he is in danger of being filled with too much anxiety, and of employing too much of his time in the world, to the neglect of some important duties of religion, and the suitable discharge of which the divine life is kept up in the soul. So it is difficult for those who have much to do with the world to grow in grace. I mention this to quicken the Christian diligently to attend to those means that are necessary for his keeping up a lively sense of the things of God in his soul, and to keep him from being discouraged if at any time he sees he has lost his frame through his many anxious cares, or through the temptations arising from this world. I don't doubt, but this is the case with many. Many of you, my dear friends, have known what it is to lose communion with God through the hurries of life, what to have your souls out of tune, to be tempted to the omission of duties. I would bring in myself with you and lay my hand upon my mouth, crying out, "Guilty, guilty." What then shall we do in such unpleasing circumstances? This leads me directly to answer the case, namely, what methods we must take to recover a healthful and vigorous frame of soul, so as to be able to maintain real and close communion with God amidst the hurries of life. It requires a person of great experience to give a suitable answer to so important a question. Sensible of my own weakness here, I hope I have earnestly entreated the assistance of the Spirit of God, in consequence of which my mind, I trust, has been directed to the following things, which I would now humbly suggest to you is necessary in this case. Examine carefully into the occasion of your decline. That God brings some afflictions upon his people in the way of sovereignty is plain, if we look into his word. But when he withholds the special influences of his Spirit from us, the consequences of which are loss of communion with him, the withering of our graces, and the decline with regard to the life of religion in our souls, we may immediately conclude that we have dishonored God in some instance or other and provoked him thus partly to leave us. It is necessary, then, to inquire into the occasions of God's withdrawment, not only for our present but for our future guidance. Was Job anxious to know why God contended with him in a way of affliction? And shall not we be solicitous to examine into the reasons of our present decline? To lose our spiritual enjoyments is much more melancholy than to be under temporal afflictions. Come then, my soul, and come, my Christian friends, and particularly come you, my dear friend, who sent in the above case and are desirous of a revival. Come and let us examine wherein we have provoked God to withdraw. What has been the reason of our late coldness and formality? How did we come to lose any of our zeal for Christ? How is it we have been led to omit spiritual duties of prayer, meditation, and so on? Why is it we have not experienced the presence of the Spirit in ordinances, drawing our souls after Jesus, and shedding abroad his love in our hearts? Oh, why is it that it is not with us as in months past, when we sat under the shadow of the Lord and his presence filled our souls with unspeakable joy? We have reason to be jealous of our wicked hearts, and have feared that they have led us aside, and so we have grieved the Holy Spirit, and he has discovered his displeasure. Let us make the inquiry. Perhaps we have been too much elated with pride. Pride is a great enemy to the divine life. It has often provoked the Spirit to withdraw his presence, that being in some measure left to ourselves, we might be humbled, and not think of ourselves beyond what we ought. It was pride that provoked God to leave Peter, and see how shamefully he fell. Luke 22, verses 33, 57 to 60. The Apostle Paul was like to be carried away with pride, even under those high enjoyments he was favored with. Therefore he had a messenger of Satan sent to buffet him, 2 Corinthians 12, 1-7. Some are proud of the world. They grow in riches, and their hearts are lifted up as if they were more amiable, or had more interest in God than others. Is this your case, my friends? Examine. Have not temporal or spiritual enjoyments lifted you up too much? Have not these vain hearts been flattering you as persons of some peculiar worth? And have you not been ready to swell with the thought, and from such an apprehension to look with an unchristian air upon others? Again, perhaps you have been led by your enjoyments to indulge a security and carelessness of spirit. Through the sad wickedness of our hearts, we have often been guilty here, and so have suffered an unspeakable loss. It has often been suggested to us after spiritual enjoyments that our state is safe and secure. There is no depriving us of the promised inheritance. God has given us an evident token of his everlasting love to our souls. Therefore we need not be so much in duty, but may indulge a little liberty, and enjoy a few of the pleasures and comforts of the present life, and all this consistent with our hopes of a better. These thoughts perhaps we have too eagerly sucked in from their having a plausible appearance, and they have proved poison to our souls. For whilst we have been taking this innocent liberty, we have insensibly grown careless and secure, and have lost our spiritual joy. This may be the case also as to temporal enjoyments. Inquire, therefore, have not these led you to a carelessness and security of spirit? God has perhaps increased your substance and given you everything richly to enjoy. You are like many of the world. You abound with comforts, and you must be like them too in frame and spirit. Oh, there is great danger here. They apprehend themselves to be too rich to be religious, that God will pay a deference to them on account of their station. And has not this been a temptation to you at times? And so you have sunk in your zeal and in close communion and converse with God? Again, perhaps you have loved this world too much. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him, 1 John 2:15. Though you may not love the world in the sense of the apostle, yet your affections may be so much set upon it, as to make a jealous God withdraw the special tokens of his love from you. It is every way unsuitable to our profession of love to God to be so fond of present things. It is offering the greatest affronts to our adorable Emmanuel, as if there were more excellency in the world than in him, or as if he was not a sufficient portion for us. O Christian, inquire, my friend, how your heart stands as to the world. Have you been slighting your Lord, your husband, your best of friends, by valuing the world too much? Again, perhaps through a multiplicity of engagements you have been tempted to neglect those duties in which Christians meet with God, and by which they find their souls enlivened. Every duty is beautiful in its season. There is a time to mind the world and a time to attend to the affairs of the soul. To be diligent in our calling is doubtless a duty. A Christian who is careless and slothful in his worldly affairs is no honor to religion. I would not throw one reflection upon industry in the pursuit of our lawful business, but rather applaud it. But then we should remember that the world has not a right to all our time. Martha was encumbered about making provision for our Lord, when she ought to have been at his feet, hearing his doctrine, Luke 10:38-42. So the Christian is often in the world when he should be in his family or in his closet. Perhaps your engagements are great. You are obliged to be much in company. This is a temptation to you to neglect some important duties that have been made sweet and pleasant to your souls. You will allow me, my dear friends, to be quite free. The case under consideration gives me an opportunity for it, and the prosperity of our souls is a matter of such importance that it requires it. I cannot but be inclined to think that evening clubs, so frequent even amongst professors, are injurious to the Christian life. Let me here explain myself for fear of a mistake. I don't mean that we are to avoid all company and conversation in an evening. Christian conversation is necessary and greatly useful. Nay, whilst we are engaged in the affairs of this life, it will be often necessary for a Christian to mix with those that perhaps are not so. But when so much time is spent in evening visits, clubs, and so on, as interferes with and often sets aside the duties of the family and the closet, or leaves but little time for these things, no wonder we then lose ground in the divine life, especially if this is too much our practice. We should remember that real religion lies not in much talking, but in secret converse with God, and in an experience of his quickening presence and grace. Christian conversation, indeed, has an excellent tendency to promote this, and oh, that it was more found amongst us. But there is a great beauty and a good deal of Christian skill lies in timing of things. One duty should not jostle out or prevent the discharge of another. Let me appeal to your conscience, O professor, and ask you a few questions. Is it your usual practice to spend your evenings abroad? What is the consequence? Do you find your family in a suitable disposition to attend to social worship at your coming home? Rather, are they not wearied with the hurries of the day and wishing for rest? The duty is oftentimes in such circumstance sadly curtailed, if not totally neglected. And how is it with the closet? That has seldom an evening visit. You have no time to look into your soul, to mourn over the sins of the day, or to call over its mercies. No time for reading and meditation. One neglect of this kind makes way for another, and the professor can contend himself with it. O Christians, has this been the case with any of you? Has this been the case with you, my friend? Has the multiplicity of your affairs, or have your engagements prevented your often being in your closet? What have you lost? But alas, you are contented, and think that none can blame you so long as you have been in company with some of the friends of Jesus. Go on so, and see what will be the consequences. You will gradually lose a relish for the power and pleasures of religion, and your zeal will too much degenerate into controversy. You may talk much of God, but you will walk but little with him. Pardon my freedom, my dear friends. I bring no charge against you, but what I would bring against myself, and would therefore put myself upon the inquiry as well as you. Thus examine into the occasions of your decline. I have given you some instances to direct and help your inquiries, but don't stop here. Carefully examine everything by which you may have provoked God to withdraw a special presence from you. Secondly, when you have found the occasions of your decline, humble yourselves before the Lord. Guard carefully against him for the future. Get your heart sensibly affected with your loss, and earnestly pray that the Spirit may not depart from you, but graciously return to you. This is the case with David, of whom we have already spoken. When he was brought to a sense of his sins, how humble! He fell down prostrate before God, acknowledged and bewailed his backslidings. He was jealous, lest he should have provoked God entirely to withdraw his presence and Spirit from him. Therefore he expostulated with him for the return of his favor, and that he would restore those divine consolations which he had before experienced, but had lately lost. Psalm 51:11 and 12. Though we may not have been provoking God to withhold from us his special presence by the commission of such open and public sins as David, yet we have been too closely attached to the world. Have we neglected some of the great and important duties of the Christian life? Have we been too proud, too careless and secure in our frame, our walk, and our behavior? Have we been trifling with God? It certainly becomes us to humble ourselves before him if we expect his return unto us. We should draw near to him with weeping and lamentation, should be often endeavoring to impress our hearts with a sense of our ingratitude, should be often mourning before the Lord, and should set a mark upon those things that have been the occasions of our decline, that we may watch against him for the future. Be often reflecting upon the loss you have had. Consider the sickly conditions your souls have been in, while the Spirit was withdrawn from you. Consider how justly God might have left you, had he been strict to mark your backslidings. And admire his infinite patience, and earnestly pray for his Spirit to return and breathe upon your dry bones. Let it be your daily concern to beg of God that he would keep your hearts, your affections, quicken your souls, and not leave you to coldness and formality. When Israel was exhorted to return to the Lord after they had sinned, they are directed to return by prayer and instructed how to pray or what to say. Hosea 14:2. Take with you words and turn to the Lord. Say unto him, take away all iniquity and receive us graciously. So will we render thee the calves of our lips, and so on. Prayer suits all cases, and is never to be neglected. Is any afflicted? Let him pray. James 5:13. So has any fallen, grieved the Spirit, and lost in some measure that liveliness and vigor of soul he once experienced? Let him return to God by prayer. Take with you words, even those words which God has furnished you with, and come to him. Take a promise in your hand and come and plead it with God for the return of his presence and Spirit. Thirdly, often make use of your covenant relation to God in pleading with him and with your own souls. The person that sent in the case under consideration does not appear to doubt of his being a Christian. The very form in which the question stands supposes it, and upon this supposition I proceed to give you this necessary direction. Some indeed may say they cannot plead a covenant relation, for they are greatly in the dark about it, and are therefore afraid to do it. In answer to this, in general observe, so long as you find your reviewing and your pleading, your covenant relation quickens you, humbles you, sets you against all sin, and tends to fill you with love to Jesus and his service. Look upon this as an evidence of your interest in the covenant. Plead, therefore, my friends, this covenant relation to God, if you would have it better with your souls, and would be in such a frame as to maintain communion with God. Number 1, plead it with God. A sense of it tends greatly to give you faith and fervency in prayer, and to fill you with hopes of the divine presence and favor. Here is a glorious argument to make use of with God. Rejoice in it, my dear friend, and make frequent use of it. Often throw yourself at the footstool of God's throne and address him in such language as this, namely, Lord, am I not thine? Did you not, O Father, choose me from eternity and determine to bestow salvation upon me? Did you not, Almighty God, undertake for me, agree to put my name in the book of life, and in consequence of this come and suffer and die in my stead? And have you not renewed me, O eternal Spirit, and set the broad seal of heaven upon my soul. If I am not yours, Lord, what means such instances of communion with you? What means this love to Jesus, these desires after a conformity to his image? Are not these the so many evidences of your everlasting love? And oh, will you leave me to wither and languish, to grow cold and formal? Will you not come and kindle the sacred spark afresh and carry on your work with an almighty efficacy? I acknowledge, Lord, I am unworthy of your favor. I have sinned and deserve your everlasting displeasure. But did it not please you of your infinite grace to enroll my name amongst your chosen ones in the volume of eternity? And will you leave me? Lord, it was your own act, your free act, and I would humbly plead it. Therefore come and visit my soul. Shed abroad your love in my heart. Pardon my backslidings, and may I be enabled to rejoice in the covenant love, and walk and act as one who has a real interest in it. So plead with God and follow the example of the psalmist, who in all difficulties temporal and spiritual address God as his God. Oh, the sweetness, the happiness that is couched in these two words, my God. Number 2. Often make use of the same argument and plead this covenant relation with your souls. When you find your souls in danger through sin, when you have lost your frame and feel a coldness and formality, and the hurries of the world tempting you to a carelessness in, and a negligence of duty, plead with your souls in some such manner as this. Oh, my soul, am I acting like an heir of glory, to be thus encumbered, so anxious, so careless? What did the Father love me from eternity and give me to his Son? Did Jesus suffer and die for me? And has the Spirit actually renewed me? In consequence of all this, is heaven my portion? Am I born to glory? Oh, and what, so cold, so formal? I will not leave you, O my soul, in this withering condition. I will plead with you the Father's everlasting kindness. I will beseech you by the tender compassions of the Son of God who gave himself for you. I will press upon you the infinite love of the Spirit who said unto you, live. I will not leave till I find things better with you. May not the Father justly complain of you? Hear, O my soul, what he says. What did I look upon you from everlasting with infinite kindness? And are these the returns you are making? Is this like one of my chosen vessels? Did I pass by thousands and look upon you? And is this all the sense you have of your obligations to me? Hear Jesus gently chiding you, O my slothful soul, saying, what did I love you so as to die for you? Was the day of your redemption upon my heart from everlasting? And shall my cause, my glory, lie so little upon yours? Behold my wounded soul, see my bitter agonies and all to rescue you from everlasting death. And will you not love me more? Hear the Spirit bringing in his charge against you and expostulating with you. Have I not, in consequence of the Father's everlasting love and the mediator's purchase, come and brought you out of darkness into light? What evidences have I given you of covenant love? How have I calmed your troubled conscience, shed abroad a Savior's love in your heart, been a spirit of grace and supplication in you, and a spirit of adoption too? And what, are you so ungrateful, so cold and secure? Thus may God the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost upbraid and chide you, O my soul. And shall not this move you? Lord, my heart begins to melt. It softens, it yields to so much love. Oh, come and do with me what you please. May I hate sin. May I love you with greater fervency and view every earthly enjoyment with indifference and use all to your glory. Thus plead your covenant relation to God and all the consequences of it with your souls. Do it frequently, and you will find it through the divine blessing a happy means of enabling you to live above this world while you are in it, of humbling you for sin, quickening you under all decays, and of bringing you into a spiritual and heavenly frame, so as to maintain some communion with God amidst the hurries of life. Number 4. If you would keep up communion with God while you are engaged in the affairs of the world, take care and watch over your frame, your ends and views. You may lawfully follow the world with diligence, but take care that you pursue those measures that are necessary to keep your hearts at a proper distance from the world, lest they should be too much carried away with it and entangled in it. Improve what time you can for God, particularly take care of your frame, before you actually enter upon your secular affairs. Be concerned that the world does not creep into your hearts when you rise in the morning. Your morning frames are of great importance. Labor to throw aside the world and do not enter upon business till you have earnestly sought the presence and blessing of God with and upon you. Consider well over in your closets the affairs of the day, the temptations you are like to be exposed to, and be earnest with God for his special presence to keep you. And endeavor to get your hearts impressed with the love of Jesus, and you will be in less danger of being carried away by the temptations of the day. You read in the life of Colonel Gardiner that great man had always his 2 hours with God in the morning. If his regiment was to march at 4, he would be up at 2. I doubt not but that frame he had in his closet often went with him through the day. I would not intimate by this that it is the duty of every one of you, my friends, to spend 2 hours in your closets every morning. But I am satisfied that if no care is taken to set apart some time to God, that person can never be in a flourishing condition as to his own soul. Let me tell you, early rising is not only good for the health of the body, but for the health of the soul too, provided some time is spent with God and communing with our own hearts. Oh, my friends, strive, wrestle with God in your morning hours for his presence in the day, and labor to get love to Jesus enkindled in your breasts before you go out of your closets and watch over your frame in the day. Examine your ends and views, the principles and springs from whence you act. Watch over your deceitful hearts. Walk as in the presence of God. In short, let the glory of Christ lie near upon your hearts, and be afraid of anything that may dishonor God, and provoke his spirit to withdraw from you. Thus, in endeavoring to cultivate a spiritual frame and temper, and a walk with humility and circumspection, you will give evidence of your being Christians indeed. May expect the presence of God with you, and I doubt not but through his divine blessing you will find your souls in a thriving condition. I would now close these few hints with 2 remarks. Number 1. Hence we find that it is not an easy thing to be a flourishing Christian. We must live much in the exercise of faith. We must be much upon our guard against sin. We must be much in our closet seeking God by prayer, examining ourselves and keeping a strict watch over our hearts, lest they should deceive us. A careless Christian cannot be a flourishing one. If you would grow up like tall cedars and flourish as trees of righteousness, you must not be cold and lifeless, careless as to your frames and conversation. Like sentinels, you must be ever upon your watch. Like persons run in a race, you must be pressing towards the mark with all your might. And like soldiers, you must be prepared for the battle and enter the field with your armor on, that you may get daily advantages over your spiritual enemies and may go from strength to strength, from one degree of grace unto another. To be lively Christians, such as glorify God in every circumstance of life, requires grace to be much in exercise, much of the presence of God and constant supplies out of our Redeemer's inexhaustible fullness. Number 2, we should be each concerned to inquire how it is with our souls, and if we are upon the decline, to attend to the directions that have been given. Put off a matter of such vast importance no longer, but examine whether you are Christians indeed or not, and in what circumstances, whether thriving or declining. And if you are upon the decline, let me entreat you to consider what has been said upon the subject, and think it high time to awake out of sleep. Or if you have any concern for the honor of Christ, any concern for the peace and welfare of your precious souls, labor to have things better with you. Let your loins be girt, and your lights burning, and may none of us be under the least alarm when death approaches, but then through grace be enabled to say, we have fought the good fight, we have finished our course, we have kept the faith. Henceforth there is laid up for us the crown of righteousness, which the Lord the righteous judge will give us at that day, and not to us only, but also to all those that love his appearing.